Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm going to be talking about the debate that was going on with West and Dershowitz on Hannity's show a couple nights ago. Uh, this video was posted 19 hours ago, so maybe it was last night. And the broader context. This is dealing with the Israeli conflict with the Palestinians and Hamas and the nuances that are going on Harvard campus. So I want to start with my experience when being a student at Harvard, when I was working on my master's degree, what I saw on campus throughout 2017 to about 2022. Now, I think this is true with many universities, all right, today, but it wasn't so prevalent when, when Gen X was starting their college years, okay? But there was kind of a rumbling that was taking place. Because you got to remember when Gen X started to get into the universities, that was roughly when the Desert Shield was happening. But there was a period of people within Gen X, so they saw parts of the oil issues, during that Gulf War problem, and then we transitioned into the Clinton years, and then there was a crisis with North Korea. My brother was in the service just after Desert Storm, and so he was ready for deployment, on North Korean South Korean rumblings that were going on back then. And they were put on alert several times, but it was called off. And it's interesting, as a sidebar to this conversation, sometimes it is better to hit the enemy than to try to use diplomacy and some sort of social engineering of the conflict to de-escalate it. Sometimes it's better to hit the enemy now instead of later, when the casualties will be more, the military prowess of the enemy starts to increase. So these are things that we need to start thinking about. Sometimes it's better to hit the enemy now instead of later, for everybody, even the enemy. And I think that's the case with what's going on with the Israeli Palestinian Hamas conflict, and potentially also Hezbollah in the northern front. Now, on a personal note, I have a distant relative that I have never met, that distant cousin, that is a medic, that's part of the paratroopers, as part of the reservists in Israel. So this person is part of the IDF. They're already deployed in the southern front. They're getting ready to go into Gaza. Now, that shouldn't be news to you because it's broadcasted all over the place, right? But several days ago, there has been a build-up to get the reservists ready and ready to go into Gaza. They're going to invade Gaza and they're going to strip it. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a concerted effort to just keep on moving more and more and more and more and more and more until all of Hamas is gone. This is going to be extremely bloody, and there's going to be a lot of collateral damage, and there's going to be a lot of buildings destroyed. Gaza is going to look like Syria. Remember those drones you saw Syria, and it's all, you know, all destroyed and gutted out? That's what's going to happen to Gaza. This is not going to be pretty, and the big international community, the larger international community, after about a week or so, is going to go, oh my God, you're doing too much. The issue here is that people need to stop thinking about social engineering. I'll eventually transition into the debate of what was going on with HARP. But the reason why I'm saying this is you need to understand the context. This cannot be socially engineered. This cannot be politically de-escalated, internationally de-escalated. There is a curse and a blessing that just came down that happened right after Sukkot. And that curse is because the Jewish people are infighting, because of the judicial branch is being hijacked by the liberals in Israel, and they don't want the more conservative or the more religious establishment to make sure that they are in control of the judicial. And so what's happening is there's infighting, and God doesn't like the infighting within the Jewish people. That's part of the curse. The other part of the curse is that there are many liberal Jews that aren't following the edicts, the precepts of Torah. And there's a punishment from that. And because the shofar was not blown on the first day of Rosh Hashanah because of the Sabbath, it allowed the prosecutor, Satan, you know, some of the people that are non-religious would use the term Satan or Satan, and Satan, basically, because he's the prosecutor, said, why give the Jewish people and the world at large blessing? Look at everything that they're doing wrong. You have the Jewish people that aren't following the precepts. The far majority of Israel is secular and is losing the understanding of Torah. And you have a world that is going crazy in terms of the destruction of the family unit, the infighting with different ethnicities, this racial superiority through CRT, the destruction of the family unit, the gender fluidity that's going on. All these things that are happening in modern society, that supposedly the more educated, the knowledgeable, right, are supposed to, have a better insight on how to make society better. Are all this stuff that's happening in modern society is antithetical to biblical precepts, and retribution is taking place. And there's people that, there's going to be people out there, there's no God, and there's no retribution. There is something very powerful happening right now that is way beyond anything that we've ever seen in terms of the conflict into the Middle East. There's a rushing in of something. I am not knowledgeable enough in the esoteric or in the religious realm to articulate it as well as some of the more knowledgeable. All right, in terms of the priests or the rabbis or even the clergy. But I do know this, that the Jewish people there's a curse that's being put on them, but but what's wrapped up in the curse as we're going through this terrible time is also going to be a blessing. The same thing is happening. There is a major curse and a blessing that's happening to the Islamic people. All right. And their blessing is going to be through the peace within the Middle East. But the curse is that they're going to see a lot of carnage because of what they have allowed to happen with these these Islamic terrorists. Now, what we're going to hear from West and Alan Dershowitz is more on the context of the contemporary, but they're not understanding the full arc of history of Abraham kicking out Hagar and Ishmael out of the tent because Sarah didn't want Ishmael and Hagar to be in the tent of Abraham. Israel is the tent of Abraham. And I am always talking about Fibonacci's and Fibonacci's. The larger Fibonacci was Abraham kicking out Hagar, all right, and Ishmael. But they were blessed, right? Well, what's happening here is that there is a Fibonacci off of that where Israel is kicking out the Palestinians out of Israel proper, and the borders over time are going to go back to biblical times. And that there's an alignment between Saudi Arabia and Israel to allow for this peace to take place, because really the Islamic religion was founded, and the home of it is really Saudi Arabia, not Israel. And this whole idea of the Palestinians is all a concoction from the UK, United Kingdom. And what is interesting is that when they were starting to do all this stuff with Palestine back in the day with the UK, right? That was declining of their empire. So, so there is historical evidence to suggest that when you are going against the flow of energy of this biblical pretext of building the third temple, if you go against it, you're not going to be a strong nation. Saudi Arabia understands this. Iran doesn't. And Iran and Saudi Arabia are at odds with each other. So what's happening is you're starting to see the great alignment taking place between the allied forces of Israel and Saudi Arabia versus the axis, the axis of evil with Iran. And that's with Hamas and Hezbollah. Now, the problem is that Hamas and Hezbollah and ISIS and all these, terrorist kind of organizations, unfortunately have partially been funded by the United States, and it's not so clear cut. And this is why I am so against the national security state in the United States. The CIA has been more of a problem than a help in terms of international affairs. But mark my words, the Jewish people are going to go through a very rough time. The Palestinians are going to go through a very rough time, but everyone is going to be blessed in the end. And to think that this is just a bunch of rockets being lobbed, this is different. This is there is a divine force that's forcing the issue because the world is not going in the right direction. Normally there's just enough people to just, to sway, God, if you want to use that term, Hashem, if you want to use that term, whatever. But that the higher power is usually swayed. Well, there's these people that are following. It's and then there's a blessing that comes down. There's enough to tip the scale to make this thing move forward. Now, there's two things that can bring the Messianic era in before it's time. Meaning the time being the 6,000th year in the Jewish calendar. That's why I come with the 200, around the 230 year mark, plus or minus, depending on how you interpret what's going on. Maybe even as little as 216, but somewhere in there, around the 230 year mark or whatever, or less. So it hits the 6,000th year, or you have all the Jews following the precepts. Well, you're never going to have all the Jews following the precepts. Or you have enough of the Jews that aren't following the precepts to bring down curse. So the Messianic era can come through a curse first and then a blessing, or the Messianic era could come through as a blessing, depending on who, if there's enough Jews that are following the precepts. Well, they're half of Israel is not following, uh, forget about Orthodox tradition, just the conservative tradition. This is why I kept on saying that Israel is largely at fault here because of not following the precepts of the Torah. It has nothing to do with occupation of the West Bank or you know the Gaza Strip and all this stuff. It has nothing to do with it. They're going to get kicked out. This is how it's going to play out. But we're going to see it stepped. We're going to see that over time, Israel is going to get larger and larger to the biblical borders, and the Temple Mount will end up being rebuilt, and the Dome of the Rock is going to be removed. That's where this is all leading to. So these social engineering types that think that they're going to be able to calm the storm of what just biblically happened during Rosh Hashanah, they're not paying attention to history. I mean, I'm talking about like what we are seeing is as profound as what was happening in Egypt during the Exodus. Now, a lot of people will not understand this, and that's because you just don't know your Bible, or the Torah, and you're not sensitive enough of the understanding of the upper and the lower. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Hannity talking to Dershowitz. Now, I just want to set it up here before I start playing it, because they're kind of doing a debate, all right? And they yell at each other. So, you got to get the context here. On campus at Harvard, there were individuals the organizations that were saying that everything that was going on with the invasion in Israel is the fault of Israel, not because of not following mitzvahs by the liberals, not because of trying to hijack the judicial branch, right, and preventing it from staying conservative, but they want to really the liberals want to control the judicial branch to prevent a more conservative society. That's what they're trying to prevent. They blame it on, well, it's just the occupation of Gaza and the West Bank, and you got to give it back. Again, Westphalian concepts, not understanding this whole thing that's going on here. The blessing in the world, the reason why you are alive, the reason why everyone is alive, the reason why all good and all bad happen is because of this metaphysical up and down, the blessing going up and blessing coming down, or curse, going up and coming down, right? There's an energy that is happening. It's very hard to describe it, but this is, and it's coming from a religious context, and I can understand people that say that, well, this doesn't exist and it's only in the four-dimensional plane. But I think that as you get older and you go back and forth and have this kind of mind discussion about this metaphysical existing or not existing, when you look at the arc of your life, you'll probably see, especially when you hit about around 40, you start seeing patterns, and you see the patterns of where there has been some sort of intervention, good or bad. These groups, about 30 of them within Harvard, started to complain about Israel, and that this invasion is all the fault of Israel. Okay, they're taking it from the context of contemporary boundaries. They're taking it from the context of contemporary history, and they are not understanding the esoteric. All right. So there's infighting within the Harvard community between the Jewish group and then the Muslim group, but also the liberals. Harvard has been taken over by a bunch of liberals. Now this is where I come in, from my observation from 17 to 22. What I saw on campus was an increase in um, organization of communism and of socialism. They would have posted on the bulletin board in Seaver Hall, uh, come to this meeting. It's, the communists of Harvard or whatever, right? Right. Or when you are walking through some of the gates, sometimes there's a pillar by the gate, especially between Science Hall and Harvard Yard. There is like this pillar right by the gate. I believe it's on the right side when you're walking into Harvard Yard away from this Science Hall. There's like this pillar that people can put um, sheets of paper and just staple it there or pin it, and you would see some sort of socialist party, affiliation, meeting that was going to happen. All right. So socialism is heavily ingrained into the student body at Harvard. Not so much with the graduate students, but it's very prevalent with the undergrad. All right. A lot of these people have never worked really that hard in terms of, they worked hard for their academic, but they didn't, they hadn't, really worked in the real world, most of them. Right. So they're naive. Now, what is interesting is that there is now a blacklist that's happening on Wall Street. Many investment firms have started to take the names of these individuals that have been protesting, and they have sworn that they will never work at these firms. Now, this is an important point. These students, because they're naive, they think that they can get away with it as well. This is just, normal student protesting. You got to remember, back in the 60s, this is where all the protesting was coming from. Not starts, but I mean, a lot of it was coming from Harvard. All right. I mean, there was also Berkeley and, and all that stuff. But Harvard was a major center of protesting against the Vietnam era. Okay. Well, it's okay. But what's weird about it is that it was the regional studies funded by the CIA over at Harvard that actually led to the domino theory, right? So, Harvard is, playing both sides of this. You got the student body whining about war, and you got you have the actual university that's actually benefiting from the war because they were getting regional study funds from the CIA. Okay. Now, so the students are protesting and not realizing that there are ramifications. So now the investment firms on Wall Street that are heavily run by Jews said that they are not going to be hired. Now, not all these people that were protesting, right, are following, the belief of Islam or even Muslim. Many of them are just Christian, right? But the reality of the situation, some of them are even Jewish, but these people need to realize that now there's a ramification of what they pushed, and that now, that they need to, they are meeting their retribution in a way. Some of the student body, many of them that were affiliated with these 30 groups within Harvard, are trying to backtrack. See, it's easy when you're a college student to say you believe in something and blah blah blah, and think that there's no ramifications later down the road. This has happened many times when they've created articles and, blamed whites, in terms of, white privilege, and that whites should be, losing rights and all this stuff. And a lot of them were actually Asian writers on the Crimson, the paper, the Harvard paper, so the Crimson. So, or the Harvard Magazine. So, there is a historical problem over at Harvard in terms of being very socialistic, and and dealing with trying to reconfigure society and socially engineer it into this communistic, socialistic kind of thing, and they want to erode your liberties. They want to take away your Second Amendment. They want to take away your First Amendment. They want to take away your Fourth Amendment. They want to take away the Constitution and reconfigure it. They want to take away the Electoral College for voting, right? That means that if you're a low population area in the United States, you don't have a say. These people are nuts. But the thing is that the ones that are at Harvard, even though that they're nuts in terms of their ideology, they're smart. And it's very dangerous. So we're going to move on to playing this video. But my observation from 2017 to 2022 through 2022 was that I saw a lot of social groups, socialism groups and communistic groups that were starting to amalgamate on campus. And there was a lot of protesting about Taiwan, but then you have a lot of Chinese that are part of the student body that were against the Taiwanese protesting this whole issue with China and Taiwan. In addition, also Tibet. China has occupied Tibet, and the Tibetans and the Dalai Lama are in exile. And there were weekly, if I remember right, it was like every Tuesday right in front of Starbucks. It could have been every Thursday, but it was a weekly kind of protest that was going on between between the Chinese and the Taiwanese, or the Chinese and the Tibetans. All right. So there's a lot of strife that's happening. But the thing is that when you have businesses that basically say, we're not going to hire you because you think that brutal terrorism, like what we just saw, is acceptable, there's ramifications on that. Even though I've been saying that the Israelis are at fault and the Muslims are at fault, the United States is at fault, Syria is at fault, Iran is at fault, Lebanon's at fault, Saudi Arabia is at fault. We're all at fault here. All right. Some of it's more spiritual at fault. Some of it is because of funding. Some of it is because of this kind of Islamic jihad, or even there's also extremists on the Jewish side too, right? But it's much more prevalent. And I'll tell you, the whole world is going to be cursed by what is just happening. The whole world. No one is going to be not affected by this. You're either going to be affected financially, you're going to be affected by your work, you're going to be affected by your social groups, you're going to be affected religiously. Something in your life is going to be affected by this. There is a call from above to get your house in order. All right. And the ones that do are going to be okay, but there's going to be a cleansing. And the ones that don't, there will be a slaughtering. Now, another thing that I noticed at the Harvard Club in New York is that as the newer generation is moving into positions like committees and subcommittees and trying to move up the ladder of the club's organization, right? They are pushing this critical race theory, this CRT. They are pushing, you can tell that they're pushing LB, LBG type stuff too, slowly, through SIGs, special interest groups within the club. So there's SIGs, right? And then there's, the proper of the club. But you can see that student body, this younger generation coming in, and they're socialistic, and they don't know history, they don't appreciate books, they are moving the ball forward in terms of socialism, and in some cases, some sort of communistic takeover. I'm not speaking in hyperbole here. This is happening. And these are people that are higher up in society. All right. I think that there is an anger now that is taking place. I mean, you really sit back and think about it, even if you're not religious or atheist or agnostic, it doesn't freaking matter. You just sit back and actually listen to the news, and you see the destruction of the family unit, the destruction, the idea that you have bodies in government that are debating about at birth abortions. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Or professions like, the medical community that have to constantly ask, how do you be, what's your pronouns, or what, how, what's your gender identity? This thing is out of control. Or, the woman of the year is a transvestite. It's out of control, and it needs to mean revert back to conservatism. You have a population that is being inundated by the flow of drugs that are coming over the border. We have a very porous border. We have a country that is losing its prowess in the currency for its currency. It's losing its control of the border. If you can't control your currency and you can't control your border, you don't have a country. That's the two foundations. So you have a large part of the society in the United States that are addicted to drugs now. You have literally, instead of the opium wars, we have the fentanyl wars, and we're on the losing side. All right, that's a reality. All right, so you have a society that is being decimated because of to quote, the drug culture, and then you have these shows and TV and movies and music that are promoting this drug culture. That's not a society that's healthy. That's not a society that's going to move towards conservatism. That's not a society that's going to be pro-family. That's going to be a society that steals. That's going to be a society that lies. That's going to be a society that just spirals out of control. And because of the legalization of marijuana, you're going to start seeing dementia cases more. You're going to start seeing pulmonary problems more. You're going to see mental health issues. You're going to see societal problems. These people smell now in New York. They just smell. And it'll just be a downward spiral. You click any night on the news, and it's just another retail store being looted by a bunch of animals. Literally animals. That's how an animal looks. That's how an animal acts. Where is the human context of this? that it's wrong to steal. It's wrong to take something that's not yours. It's wrong to get on a moped and randomly shoot elderly. There's no respect for life. There's no respect for property. There's no respect for a constitution. There's no respect for a flag. There's no respect for your country. That's what CRT is. That's what pushing this gay agenda out there. And that is what is going on with not accepting the fact that we get blessing if we act appropriate. But we don't want to, we think we're in control. We're not in control. Sit back, take my advice. No matter how smart you are, no matter how much you think you are in control, you are not in control. If God doesn't want to give you something, he's going to knock you down. If God wants to give you something, you'll get it. You have to put the effort, or what is called, you have to create the vessel for the blessing. But if you don't deserve it, you ain't gonna get it. So we need to understand that this liberal life that we have been seeing and the spiraling out of control of society is a direct result from our inability to be kind to one another, our inability to respect the property of others, the inability to respect the life of others. And now we're going to go through a very tumultuous time. So I'm going to start playing this soon here. My observation at Harvard has been that you have a student body that feels that they're privileged and that they can, quote, tell the university and tell the world on how to be. My take is that if they didn't like the university, they should have left it. They should have gone to someplace else. No, they don't want that. They want the prestige of the university and to be able to try to get, because it does open up doors, for interviews and stuff, and to build up companies and stuff. There is a large network of the Harvard community, but there is starting to become a pushback. And now these individuals that acted the way they are now prized. And some of them are backtracking because they do things because they think that there's no repercussions. But when there are repercussions, then the hardcore ones, you can tease out the hardcore and the not so hardcore, and you have the hardcore that's still there. But blacklisting is starting to take place with these people when they can be identified. But I just think that the world in general is spiraling out of control, and we've gotten to a point where just asking forgiveness isn't going to be good enough. Everyone is going to be having some level of retribution. So now I'm going to play this, and this I'll comment as it's going, but it's taken from the context of a contemporary history.
Thank you. We'll check back in with him throughout the evening time. First, left-wing bigotry, anti-Semitism running rampant on university campuses around the world, London, Australia. What's happening? Chanting in Australia, about gas chambers and, for Jewish people. What is happening on our college campuses? What is happening among the Democratic Party? Some Harvard students now are scrambling to finally rescind their support of their bio letter, actually blaming the victim, Israel, for the brutal Hamas terror attacks. Not everyone disagrees with them. 2024 presidential candidate, former Harvard professor Cornel West said the students were largely right, but they lack nuance. He joins us now with reaction, along with attorney also Harvard professor, Alan Dershowitz.
For ones that don't know, I remember a medical neuro class in Seaver Hall, and we were going to have a test. I don't remember, maybe it was the second test of the semester. And Cornel West was in our room. I think it was 102 was the room. On the main floor, if you walk, for the ones that are from Harvard, when you walk onto through the main gate, main door of from the yard of Seaver, you go through that main door and you turn left, in that main room, that lecture room, the lecture hall, that was the room. I think it's 102. He was speaking and he kept on talking, and it was about deconstructionism of the United States, right? And, pushing that, we got to reconstruct, another freaking liberal destroying America, right? But he wouldn't shut up. And our professor had to go up to him and say, we have to get prepared for a test, because the students wanted to get in there early to study a little bit for the test, try to memorize some stuff before the taking of the test. But he wouldn't shut up with his stupid deconstructionism. And a lot of the students that were part of the medical neuro, were slotted for medical school. So this was an important day, right? He wouldn't shut up. And eventually he left the room. And then, because Seaver Hall is that old style wood flooring and wood paneling, he was talking in the hall and it would echo. And so our professor had to go out and tell him to shut up again. This is emblematic of a liberal. They don't know when to shut the fuck up.
So thank you both for being with us. You always call me Brother Sean, I call you Brother Cornel. I'm not that happy with you tonight.
Then we could talk about why
because we have 31 groups from Harvard. Harvard's supposed to be, I always thought, the top of the top. To get into Harvard, what an accomplishment, what an achievement, what academic excellence you must show, a cut above everyone else. And 31 student groups blaming Israel, blaming the victim. And your answer to this is, they are largely right. Hamas that murdered children, Hamas that murdered innocent people.
That's what I said, though, brother.
Okay, they are largely right, but lacking nuance.
No, I didn't say lack nuance. That's the title of the piece.
Okay.
My actual words were, I just being very honest.
I got it here in front of me.
The words were that Israel's policies of war crimes and collective punishment against Palestinians.
I'll read it to you. Israel and the United States
Hamas must take responsibility for killing innocent people. Anybody who kills innocent people are engaging in barbaric acts.
You said
no
Israel,
who they are, what color, what nation, and so forth.
Israel and the United States are primarily.
The United States has supported and enabled.
You explain to this audience. I want you to explain how is Israel and the United States responsible for beheading 40 children? How?
I'm talking about the context. 545 Palestinian children died in August.
The context, the bottom line is, the context is this: before this latest round of escalation and invasion of Israel, the context was that there was a peace agreement that was starting to move forward between Israel and Saudi Arabia, and Iran doesn't want that, because what that means is that the centroid point of Islam will be in Saudi Arabia and will not be housed in Iran. And that this economic growth will lead to this building of the Messianic age. It has to be in steps, though. And part of that is the alignment of Israel and Saudi Arabia. The Palestinians have never had a biblical right to Israel, ever. The Palestinians is a construct of the UK. And until This is what I said at the very beginning. Sometimes you have to, get the job done early because it's going to get a lot worse later. All right. The Palestinians are going to have to be pushed out. There is no idea of a two-state solution. The two-state solution is that that Israel proper is going to go back to the biblical borders, and the Palestinians are either going to live peacefully within Israel, or they're going to get pushed out into the Arab countries and amalgamate with them. That's the reality. The UK wanted, because of their oil interests, wanted to populate Israel with Muslims. And that's the Palestinians. And there were Jewish people that stayed in Israel during the diaspora. The Palestinians is a UK construct. Now, if you don't agree with me, why don't you check your history? So what happened was Iran doesn't want this peace to happen. And so they're funding terrorist groups. They rile up Hamas. They however they procured the rockets and made the rockets, I'm not sure, was it direct funding or direct shipment of them from Iran? I don't know. But they procure the rockets or procure the material for the rockets, and they overran the Iron Dome. I believe if you shoot more than 800 rockets at a time, it overloads the system. And then they go and do these mass killings. Israel doesn't go in and does something like this. This is 100% evil, what we just saw, even though God allowed it to happen because the Jews aren't following the precepts of the Torah. The only reason why Israel's at fault is because they're not following the precepts of the Torah. And social engineering that's taking place for forever. Hamas is a terrorist organization that needs to be eliminated.
One American said a word. I believe a Palestinian baby has the same value as an Israeli baby. So when you have that kind of vicious hatred and revenge, you get responsive hatred and revenge. They are all wrong. They're all war crimes. They're all to be condemned. But you cannot simply look at this particular moment without the larger backdrop of an ugly occupation and the ugly attacks chronically against Palestinians.
Those are not your words. Largely right.
The larger context of the occupation. Get it in your thick skull, liberal. President candidate West. The larger context is the Palestinians never had the right to the land. And it's been Western powers playing politics and the oil chessboard, and the pawn happened to be the Palestinians. That's what really happened. That's the larger context. The larger context is that the temple is going to be rebuilt. The larger context is that the world is being damned because of our behavior, because of the way society is moving towards. It's antithetical to Torah precepts or biblical precepts. And through this tumultuous time, blessing will come about. But it's going to be rough. That is the larger context, Dr. West.
Israel and the United States are primarily responsible for this attack, Professor Dershowitz.
Well, I complained when Palestinian children were killed, but I explained why they were killed. Here is one of the leaders of Hamas. For the Palestinian people, death has become an industry.
Just remember that Alan, you know, has ties to Epstein.
The elderly excel at this, and so do the children. This is why we have formed human shields of the women and the children. Hamas is the ones responsible for the killing of Palestinian children. Also, Hamas has a term. It's called the CNN strategy. And the CNN strategy is induce Israel into killing Palestinian children by using them as human shields. Then parade the bodies out on CNN, and you'll see what happens. People like Cornel West will engage in crocodile tears, blame it on Israel, when the entire blame is on the Palestinians, Hamas, for using their children as human shields, and then using their children.
It is not a standard operating procedure for the IDF to use children and women and civilians as shields as they're doing their operations. That's a fact. Hamas it is. And we have to make a fine distinction there. Hamas is not the Palestinians. The far majority of the Palestinians are not for Hamas. So that's an important distinction. But it's also true that the Palestinians don't have the right to the land of Israel, because they're of nothing but a UN construct or a UK construct, going all the way back to their involvement with oil in the Middle East. They wanted to populate that region. They were trying to get Arabs to populate there, and there were a few Jews that were still in Israel at the time, but the majority were in Europe, because of the diaspora. Those are the facts. But it's been written for thousands of years that Israel is going to rebuild that temple. The third temple is coming. All right. And the borders are going back to the biblical borders. So, instead of fighting this, if people just accept it, then the whole world will have a blessing. But no, we need those social engineers coming right out of Harvard to say and how they think that it should be done. But Alan's point is strong in the sense that the IDF doesn't use women and children as shields. Hamas does, and Hamas wants this. Hezbollah wants this to happen. That there's collateral damage, so they can project it into the mainstream that Israel's all bad. There's going to be a lot of collateral damage when they move into Gaza. Trust me on this. All right, on both sides. There's going to be a lot of the death toll is going to start piling up on both sides, Israel and in Gaza, the Palestinians and Hamas, even though they're trying to root out Hamas. It's going to be bad, but they allowed it to happen. The Palestinians could have went to war with Hamas, and they did.
Professor,
But
what is Hamas's charter?
I have the same outrage when Palestinian babies are killed, when
It
Jewish
shouldn't
babies
be
are
the
Israeli
same
babies. I want
outrage.
you to have the same indignation when Palestinians are killed.
Not when they're
That's
killed. Not when they're
consistent.
killed by Palestinians. You can't make
Where's
a
the
moral
humanity?
comparison. When Nazi kids were killed in the bombings of Dresden, I didn't have the same comparison when Jewish kids were put in gas chambers and crematoriums. You're a professor of theology. Don't you understand the moral difference between deliberately murdering a kid and having collateral damage because there are human shields? You're running for president of the United States. What would you do? Let me ask the question.
Okay.
What would you do if they were firing, terrorists were firing at American children in America, and the terrorists were hiding behind Palestinian children? Would you allow the killing of Americans to continue, or would you go and get the terrorists, even if it meant possibly collateral damage on Palestinians? What would you
I'll
do?
tell you exactly what I would do. First, truth and morality tend to be two casualties in any context of war. I would want to tell the American people the truth. I would tell them what the context is, how we found ourselves in this situation.
And
I would not jump for a military invasion and a genocidal attack on a
Genocidal attack.
He keeps on focusing on the Westphalian concept of contemporary borders and not accepting the fact that this is of biblical proportions. And the blessing for everybody all over the world will happen when this is allowed. When the borders go back to biblical borders and the Temple Mount is rebuilt. It's that simple. That is the truth. But here you got these really intelligent individuals, you know, that have a lot of notoriety in the media, having a very narrow mindset that of 100-year or less, 75-year time span. But this thing is going all the way to the day of the conception of Hagar with Ishmael, you know, there's the son with Abraham. That was where it starts. And the expulsion of Hagar and of Ishmael out of the tent of Abraham. The Palestinians need to be expelled from the tent of Abraham. They will get a blessing. But it's not the blessing for them as the same for the Jews. Just like, you know, there are different types of tribes. You know, there are the Kohanim and the Levites, and, you know, we've lost track of the other tribes because of the diaspora. But the priests do certain functions. The Levites will do certain functions, right? The rest of the tribes do certain functions. A Levite can't be a Cohen. A Cohen can't be a Levite. You know, a Levite doesn't do the things that a regular Israelite would do. Everyone has a place in the construct of this. That, you know, there are religious component to this, and they get a blessing with their peace. Same thing in the context of Jewish people versus the Jews versus Islamic. Their people. They'll get a blessing, but it ain't going to be the blessing that the Jews have. It's different. It's not better or worse. It's just different. But it's what it is the Muslims want what the Jews have. Not realizing that if you just leave the Jews alone, you'll actually have a better life. You know, the Muslims would have a better life. You just leave us alone. But that's the larger context, West. Now, Alan, you know, he's more focused on the immediate. Yes, you know, there's this, you know, the massacring of the babies, but the reality of the situation is this, yes, Hamas, you know, is hiding in the general population and causing the collateral damage, right? And, you know, there's going to be a lot of collateral damage on, you know, with Palestinians. But the brutality that we saw when they crossed over the border and killing, that it's just indiscriminately, is a sign of a very, very sick society. To say that Hamas is human is that they are barbaric, and these barbaric individuals need to be eliminated. But God allowed it to happen because the Jewish people are faltering. They are not following the precepts of the Torah. There are many Jews in Israel and in the world that are not following what they should be following. They're not growing spiritually. They're retreating spiritually. And that is endemic of the whole world. That's emblematic of the whole world. We're losing the family unit. We're losing the idea of what is right in society and what is not right in society.
No,
If
it's
you
not
come in,
the genocide
where are they supposed to go?
when you're
Where are they supposed to go? Now,
terrorists.
this is like Warsaw, 1943. Where do they go?
Where do they go?
Yes.
Let me tell you where they go. They go to the UN. UN is keeping them.
Gaza to
They
Geneva?
go to no. The UN has places in Gaza. They go to the Rafah
11
crossing.
UN people have been killed in the last few
They
days.
go to Egypt. They go.
Egypt, how they
Wait a
can't get
minute.
out?
Let
Come
me
on,
make
bro.
another thing clear.
No.
Gaza City is very dense. But
Absolutely.
Gaza
It's just-
itself, the Gaza Strip, there's lots of room. The Israelis have said, get out of Gaza City, go to Rafah, go to Khan Yunis, go to other places. And you know what Hamas
With
is
no
saying?
water, no
Wait a
food,
minute.
no electricity.
You know what
all
Hamas is
that stuff.
saying? Hamas is saying, don't go.
Oh, I'm not here
Don't
to defend
go.
Hamas.
You are.
I'm not defending Hamas.
Wait a minute.
I'm a lot.
Why didn't the Palestinians fight Hamas? And the Palestinians will have a much better life if those 2 million people spread out to different countries within the Islamic world.
Did you ever-
I'm defending the suffering and the Palestinians.
I want to hear.
And Hamas
I
itself
wanna
committing
hear-
war
I
crimes.
want to hear you say.
Anybody who commits war crimes are barbaric. I'm saying that explicitly, but I want you to say if the Israeli Defense Forces are killing children,
No.
are they barbaric too?
No.
Are they ever barbaric?
If they target children,
Yes. Have they ever targeted
No,
children? They have
absolutely
never
never in the
78
history
years.
have they ever targeted a
But
child
you got to get off
deliberately.
the crack pipe, man,
No,
please.
they
Please.
never targeted
They
a child.
killed one innocent
Not
person
purposely.
since
No,
1948.
not
Are they that
purposely.
pure? Are they that?
You don't have to be very
Come
pure
on, bro.
not to kill a
Please.
child. Not to kill
Oh.
a child.
Let
They
me
killed
hold on.
550
Let me show
Because
something.
they're being used as human shields.
Let me show something
Well,
we
we
showed
got
in this
deep
program last night.
disagreements on this.
What I'm about to show this audience, these are cartoons that are aired in Gaza for young children that are taught to hate the Jewish people. You know, just watch this for a second, and I'll have you both comment. Watch that.
لأنه اليهود أطفالهم جعلوهم عشرة والدمار والقتل والطعن.
تهف بيدها الصغيرة وجوه الدمار الحقيرة راها العدو كره طفولتها كره بطولتها صوب البندقية وأطلق الرصاص.
Professor West, if you brainwash and indoctrinate young children, that is, you're teaching them to hate from that young age. Not good.
No.
Here's the problem.
Any kind of
Here's the
inculcation
problem
of
with
hatred is
your.
immoral and wrong.
Here's the
I just
problem I
want
have with your
brothers and
teaching.
others, if there's any hatred
Hang on a
of
second.
anybody,
Would-
from the
would-
Palestinians.
Would you condemn Black Lives Matter Chicago for justifying the Hamas murder by using these little airplane things and coming down on the music
260.
event?
But
I want to hear.
I would certainly condemn it.
You
I would
condemn
certainly
Black
condemn-
Lives Matter.
I would condemn anybody.
Okay,
It matters.
I'm glad to hear you.
This is morality and spirituality.
Okay, so you condemn Black
But
Lives Matter.
part of our challenge, though, and this is important, just as a leader, you see, he asked me what I would do.
Reality and spirituality. All right, Dr. West. Why aren't you talking about the overall context of what the Bible has been saying that will happen, that needs to happen? All right. Yeah. This is why I'm saying that these people are not paying attention. You can't control this. This is not a controllable situation. This is driven and allowed to happen, and the suffering is because of our own doing. Everybody in the world, but the higher power is forcing the Messianic era into motion here. Like I said, there's 3 ways that the Messianic era can happen. Default to 6,000 years from the Hebrew calendar, you know. Everyone follows mitzvahs in the Jewish community, which is probably never going to happen. Or the far majority of the Jewish people are sinning. And depending on the context, depends on the retribution that comes down. That's the way the rules work. It's very simple. You don't need to have all these different degrees and all this to figure it all out. Very, 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 very simple. It boils down to a very simplicity. Are you a contributor of a society that is better, or are you a contributor of a society that is worse? Are you a good person, or are you not a good person?
I would say we got the in occupation. We got to make sure that Palestinians have the same dignity, the same rights as
Let me
Israelis.
ask you.
That's at the center.
Here's
That's
what
at
You know I support that. You know I support the two-state solution. But Hamas doesn't support the two-state solution. Hamas opposes it.
West, I want to ask this question. Would Gaza be facing annihilation if Hamas did not attack and kill all these innocent Israelis? Of course not.
Gaza has been facing
You're not
a
answering.
chronic
Would they be
process
facing
of
an imminent annihilation?
since 2000.
Would they be facing
2000 and what? 2000 and
annihilation?
what?
Since 2006 and 7, and Gaza was taken over by Hamas. I'm not
And
pro
they start-
Hamas. I'm pro the democracy, but I'm concerned about the suffering of Palestinians.
Israel didn't fire a single rocket until Hamas fired 5,000
Israel
rockets.
controls the
Started
land, the air,
only
the
after
pain,
Hamas
the
took
food
over.
going in, the trade coming in, and so. But it was already under occupation.
It was
since
never.
1967.
No. The occupation ended 2005. Learn your history.
Oh.
Sharon left. Every American, every Israeli settler, every Israeli soldier left. In 2006, it was like Singapore. It could have been the nicest place in the Mediterranean. Then Hamas overthrew
New
them.
York would be the occupation if another country owned its air, its space, its
Didn't
food,
own it
its
between
trade.
2006
There's
and
containment, brother.
2008.
Containment. Let's be
Only
honest.
after Hamas.
Let me end with this.
Yeah.
Here's a sad fact. This debate could not be held on Harvard's campus today.
That's right. That's right. I would not be allowed to speak at Harvard.
I am offering to go up to Harvard. I am offering to go up to Harvard and
Let's do it.
I will moderate it.
We've debated before.
And I don't think Harvard will let Professor Dershowitz or Professor Brother Hannity on campus.
Well,
to
you
do
could
it.
go with me.
We'll all go and have a
You go
public
with
debate.
me.
And then
I'll be there.
But the truth is going to be difficult.
Would you all like to see that on audience?
Yeah, absolutely.
I will bring our audience.
I think it's also you're seeing this well-known Black professor, Professor West, and well-known Professor Dershowitz, both from Harvard. Jewish and Black, right? Arguing, And I think that a lesson, not necessarily a lesson, but a warning, that this Israeli-Palestinian Hamas conflict, Iranian or even Hezbollah conflict, right, is going to boil over into the whole CRT push and Black Lives Matter. And we're seeing rumblings of that across the country, especially in New York, with these protests, right? Today I'm recording this on a Friday. So this is Friday the 13th, right? And there's this call, for major protests. And the New York police are heavily observing the situation in New York. Right now, nothing crazy has happened yet. There were other protests around the world, about this that have been, somewhat violent. So it's still left to be seen, but I have a feeling that this is going to spill over into black protesting, from the side of the BLM movement. You gotta remember, there's a lot of anti-Semitism that's been brewing up in the last couple of years, especially in New York. And there's a lot of Asian hate that's also been brewing up. And a lot of it, not all, but a lot of it, at least in New York, is coming from the BLM movement. So I suspect, when you're seeing this arguing between Allen and West, you're going to see this arguing with the BLM and the Jewish people within the United States. Because the BLM movement is aligned to a very liberal mindset of reparations, blame the white. How is this any different between Palestinians blaming the Jews and the blacks blaming the whites? And this can boil into further conflict that's not of religious origin, but of racial origin, ethnicity. So we have to keep that in mind. But as of right now, it's been somewhat controlled. But the whole police force is out on the beat in New York City. So they were called up and said, be ready. So, and there is concern about potential unrest across the country. When I looked at the oil market was going up before this recording. So there's this. I think there's some pressure that Israel is going to be doing their ground invasion soon. Might be even on the 14th because of the new moon. And this world protesting that's taking place against Israel. So keep that in mind. We are going to go through a tumultuous time, and I keep on saying that we're all at fault. All of us are at fault. We all have a personal responsibility because that we have not been what we are commanded to be, the types of people to be, in terms of helping your neighbors, or in terms of following precepts of the Bible, or in terms of so many things in our lives. We all can do some sort of repentance. We can all look into our own heart and see that we could be a better person. And when we all do that, then the curse will turn into a blessing. But during this process, there is going to be a lot of carnage, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. It's going to be financial pain. It's going to be worry. I was listening to a Parsha lecture. I think it was what is called a Maimorim. Maimorim, I think it's the Hebrew word for it. Describing Noah and the age of Noah, and the people during Noah's time before the flood, pre-flood. They lived for a long time, and their constitution was stronger. They were stronger people. They didn't get sick as much. They could live longer, and they knew more. Their memory was better. The way they digested was different. Okay. Now, some of this is very Kabbalistic, but these people that were pre-Noah, pre-flood, during Noah's time, were stronger individuals, more intellectual, more. They had a stronger memory. They were their the best way to describe it is their constitution was stronger. Their body, constitution meaning body, was stronger. But what happened was that they ended up with the knowledge, and during this time period, they didn't have to fear much. They didn't have to fear death because they lived for a longer period of time. They didn't have to fear disease because they had a stronger constitution. They didn't have to fear about a surplus, fear about food because there was surplus. So the fears. The point is that the pre-Noah time, the pre-flood time, they didn't need to fear, and because they didn't fear, they started to sin, right? And the world became crazy, right? And so after the flood and the rebuilding of society, slowly, people started to not live as long. People had fear because there wasn't surplus. People had fear because they forgot things. People, people had diseases more often. So the constitution of the individual post-flood was weaker than the constitution of individuals pre-flood. So to reboot the world, right? To reset, the Great Reset. That was the Great Reset. All right. Fear was put more into me. So and that's an interpretation of the scholars of the Bible. Give or take. Take it or leave it. It doesn't matter to me. But I think that there's a lesson there to realize that we're going through a tumultuous time period. This is not like the Beirut bombing in the 80s. This is not some of the the typical terrorist attacks that were going on during the 80s, the 70s, 80s, and the early 90s. This is a much more, not so much human human beings set in emotion. It's more like God's forcing, and everyone is going to be again cursed, and everyone is going to be blessed that comes out of this. There's a curse and a blessing. There's a blessing wrapped up in a curse. And until we start to realize that liberalism is a major reason for the erosion of our societies around the world, we are not going to be able to fix the problem. We have drifted away of self-governance to the point that we are very similar to what it was like, and too arrogant as it was like pre-flood time. I find it odd and kind of spooky, probably more spooky than odd, that there was a rainbow on 9/11's memorial, on the anniversary of 9/11. And the ones that lived in New York could see a rainbow because it was raining, and then all of a sudden this rainbow popped up. It's the very first time that I actually said a prayer. When you see something for the first time for the year, you're supposed to say a certain prayer. First time you see the ocean, first time you try a new fruit or whatever. And this was the first time that I actually, felt the need to say a prayer over the rainbow. I don't know why. I have no idea why I felt that urge to say the prayer. I had to look it up, in a book, but I did. And then after I said the prayer, several minutes later, the rainbow drifted off. And hindsight is always 2020, or sometimes it's 2020. It's not always, but we're seeing this context in the 9/11 context. You know, maybe there was an inside job, but God allowed it to happen. That's the reality of the situation. And you know, there's this shift to a new era. And you know, the rainbow is, you know, it can be interpreted as is that, you know, you will be judged if you move too far away from the precepts of the Bible. And that God, you know, provided a new start for the world. So maybe in a small way, you know, we can take something, learn from that transition from pre-flood to post-flood, and see what's happening with what's happening now. Also, what was odd in New York was that during Rosh Hashanah, it rained a lot. And Yom Kippur, it rained. So during the High Holy Days, and even Sukkot, more so than normal, from what I, you know, just anecdotally, you know, trying to remember over the years. This year seemed to rain over the holidays more. Maybe that's a little hint of, you know, there is, again, a curse that's coming. You know, a lot of people would say rain is good, but if too much rain, then that's bad. You know, there's a blessing within the curse that is happening. I know it sounds kind of strange in what I'm saying, but there is this context, that there's a manifestation of some of the concepts that I'm talking about. But that's my take on West and Alan Dershowitz. And, you know, the Harvard community at large is not, or at least is not verbalizing the way these 31 groups or 30 groups were verbalizing that the whole fault of this is Israel. But the bigger issue is just that there's a liberalism that's out there that is degrading society, eroding society. And we as a people are being punished because of it. That is the big picture, Professor West. Not the smaller picture that you're focused on. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube. Make sure you click the link in this video and subscribe. Make sure you click the bell for notifications of those channels. Also subscribe to my Patreon, Bitchute, and Rumble channels. And to help support my news coverage, please subscribe to my Patreon account, my Patreon channel. That will help to cover the news coverage. And also go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and you can purchase health products. I also sell books, some books that I wrote during my pre-dissertation days, post-dissertation days, my time at Harvard, and you know, so I have, I think, 8 books on the website. But go there and take a look at some of the products that I offer. I'm going to show you some of those products. I sell structural nanosilver in liquids and gels, soaps and lozenges. So this product, Health Max 35, is 35 ppm liquid that has the structural nanosilver. This helps to neutralize pathogens. So what I do is I take a teaspoon of it a day, I gargle with it and swish it in my mouth, about 30 seconds in the mouth, gargle for about 30 seconds, and then swallow it. What's happening is that you're neutralizing the pathogens that is in your oral cavity and down your esophagus. The silver gel that I have here is, this can be used on cuts or abrasions, minor burns, irritation, acne. And what it's doing is it's making sure that that wound area is clean, and that the pathogens are neutralized. It's also a great product in terms of going out and trying to protect yourself from pathogens by putting it on your hands, and it'll stay on your hands for about 5 hours. Put it around your mouth and lightly coat your nostrils and in your ears and around your eyes, right? And it will be active for about 5 hours or so, and you'll be able to neutralize pathogens. You can also use it as a skin care product where you don't have really any problem with your skin, right? But you can put it on your whole body or just your face, and you do it at night, and you just leave it on while you sleep, and then you wash it off in the morning. And what you'll notice is that your skin will start to look healthier, especially if you use the collagen and the vitamin C products that I offer. Because what's happening is that you're improving the skin at the topical level, and you're also improving the skin at the dermal level, the underneath. That's helping to regenerate. So the topical is the gel, and then the collagen and the vitamin C. And when you drink water, about 64 ounces a day, filtered water, without any fluoride, get the fluoride out of your water, then what will happen is that you'll get this cross-linking and the building up of the molecular structure that you need to really improve the skin tension and improve the skin health. It gets even boosted when you take the C60, because that's a strong antioxidant, the resveratrol, to get rid of senescent cells. So it helps to populate the lower dermal layer. And what happens is your cells start to move up to its surface and turn more keratin. So that's a great product to improve your skin, but also to neutralize pathogens. Because we're going through the cold season, get some silver lozenges. This is the structural nano silver lozenges. I have it in stock right now, sweet menthol, but I also carry green apple. I'm also going to be putting on the store 2 other flavors shortly. I have a structural nano silver toothpaste that does not have any fluoride. This is a very great product. It's stronger than what Alex Jones sells. This will neutralize the pathogen, reduce the plaque that's starting to build up. And a lot of times people, when they get older, they start to have receding gums and all this. And this is going to reduce that gum inflammation and reduce the receding gums. In addition, by having good oral hygiene, you're going to have less chance of cardiovascular disease, because there's a correlation between oral health, especially when you get older, and cardiovascular disease. But it's not the only reason for cardiovascular disease. I mean, there's a ton of other reasons, but good oral health is really important. So neutralize the pathogens with the toothpaste. Freshen your breath, whiten your teeth, and you're going to have less of that inflammatory response, because by neutralizing the pathogens, you're going to have less of that inflammation. And part of the protocol, this anti-aging protocol, is reduce inflammation. I also have different soaps. This one is charcoal tea tree. This one is oatmeal spice. So this is the structural nano silver soaps. And I have peppermint. I also carry lavender and I think one other one, I can't remember now. Digestive enzyme complex. This is a great product Because what this does is it allows you to be able to digest your proteins, your carbohydrates, and your lipids easier and reduce that stress on the pancreas. As we get older, our pancreas starts to age and we have too much stress. And a lot of people are have diabetes and the pancreas isn't making enough insulin. So there's stress on the pancreas. So it's really important as you get older to supplement your digestive enzymes. So there's not as much stress on the pancreas and you're able to break down those compounds and you'll be able to digest your food better. In addition, ones that work out all the time, they have to fuel their body quicker, and this will also help with that. Ashwagandha, a great product to bring down the inflammatory response because it'll control your blood glucose levels. Turmeric, anti-inflammatory, bring down that inflammation naturally. It's also an antioxidant. I'm a proponent of probiotics, so I have this powdered form that I mix with my hummus every day. Vitamin C. Again, you can take this as just a supplement, but a lot of people are using this with the silver gel and the collagen to help to improve their skin health. Vitamin D3, extremely important to absorb calcium, but it's also a cofactor for gene expression. If you're low on D3, you cannot do the proper gene expression that your body needs to go through its normal processes. But when a cell needs to go through apoptosis, it's been found that vitamin D will help with that. So if you have an infected cell and you have a mechanism that circumvents the apoptosis by increasing vitamin D, it'll help to reduce that circumvention, and it'll push the cell to go into apoptosis. Resveratrol, again, this helps to get rid of senescent cells. It's been known to be helpful for anti-aging, and it's a very good antioxidant. This product here, C60, this is the avocado version in the 4-ounce bottle. This is a great product. It's a very strong antioxidant. It's going to neutralize those reactive oxygen species and improve the mitochondrial health. Because when you have too much reactive oxygen species in your cell is going to go through a process where it's not going to be working very well and potentially go into necrosis. So you want to keep that mitochondrial health the best that it can be, and that the cell to be in its highest state of health. And by reducing that stress, that reactive oxygen species stress, you're going to improve that cellular health. And when you're doing that on a regular basis, you're going to actually see that your whole body is starting to increase with ATP. You'll have more energy. You're moving around more. You'll have better muscle mass, and you will your metabolic processes will improve because your cells aren't stressed from the reactive oxygen species. So a major component of the anti-aging is antioxidants, right? Well, C60 is the best antioxidant you can take. I take a teaspoon of it a day. I also have this great multivitamin that you can get on my store. And so please, the store is the-studio-reykjavik.com. I also have lignans. Now, this helps with hormonal health and also the immune system. And what I do, this is in a powdered form. So what you do, this is flax, right? And I mix it with the probiotic powder in my hummus. So I take this product, the lignans, and then I take the probiotic powder also, and I mix it with my hummus in the afternoon. And that way I'm getting my daily probiotic, and I'm also getting the hormonal and the immune boost from the lignans. And then I also have deodorants that are made from very high quality essential oils from the Himalayas. This product is is made by Rainbow Herbals, and this particular one is citrus. But this deodorant bar is all natural, very high quality, and I also have a version of it in peppermint tea tree. So those are some of the products that I offer. I also offer, B complex and Goodnight formula. But take a look at some of the products that I have. I have also this clarity factor. This helps to reduce the brain fog. This is way better than Brain Force from Alex Jones. So I mean, just the two products here. The toothpaste way better than what Alex Jones sells, and this clarity factor is way better than what Alex Jones sells. So it helped to support my coverage, and to help support your health and to follow the anti-aging protocol that I've been telling people to follow, that I do every day. You'll start to see benefits. But it's also, you need proper diet, proper exercise, proper sleep, proper mental outlook, right? You have to challenge your mind, learn stuff, read, write, stay away from too much social media and all that. But if you follow this kind of protocol, then you're going to start seeing that your body is healing and that you're aging slower compared to the control group that would be not taking the advice that I'm offering. So, please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos, so it's easy to get to the store. And take a look at the products that I offer and try them out. Thank you for listening. Thank you for, sitting here and listening to my perspective on this. I know it's a little hard, to accept some of the, the reality of the situation. But once we realize that we're all at fault in this world, right? Then we can rectify it. We can improve we're doing wrong, improve our own individual spirituality, but also realize that there is this liberal mindset that is starting to degrade the society, and we can push back on it now. Just like how the Israelis are pushing back on the terrorists, the Hamas, we have to push back on these really left, liberalist, socialist, communist type infiltration of our society that's taking place. It's coming right out of Harvard. I mean, Harvard is a big part of it. There's a big part of the student body that is about social engineering, and has drifted away from the precepts of the Bible. And what is interesting is that Harvard used to be a clergy school at the in its early inception. It had origins that were of spirituality, and unfortunately, what has happened is the student body is a bunch of crazy liberals. So we as people need to start fighting back on CRT, on these ultra liberalism type things, on the falsehoods of the BLM movement, on reparations, and all these things that are trying to take away from people, overtax people, and make this society less productive. When you're destroying the family unit, you're not going to have a society for very long. When you are killing babies in the womb that are viable, that is very shameful. You're killing someone, right? When you have policies where you're taking it all the way to term and terminating the baby, that is just wrong, right? I do think that there needs to be some reproductive rights for women, but that's probably in that first trimester. And when you get to the third trimester, I don't think you should have the right unless there is some physical problem with the mother or with the baby, and that termination of the pregnancy has to happen. But that's those are more rare cases. Most children are aborted because of financial reasons, or because of not wanting a child. It's not because of rape, incest, that's not the far majority of the cases of why that's happening. So, we have a society that's in a kill mode, of the children, of the unborn, and the unborn should have some rights. So it's a complex situation. I've gone over it on other videos and my perspective on it. I think it's a perspective that is a middle ground. That first trimester, the woman has the right. On the second trimester, if the child is not viable, or it's endangering the health of the mother, or when you do prenatal care and you realize that the development is going in the wrong direction for the fetus, then termination should be allowed. But if the baby is fine, in the second and third trimester, I think you should not be terminating the pregnancy. I think that's just wrong. So, other than if it's to save the mother's life, because in some cases you might have to, but those aren't really common cases. Those are more rare cases. But we have the society, the cult of death, and these are coming from a liberal perspective, and these same liberals that are willing to kill the baby, right after its birth or right before its birth, late term abortions, or after birth abortions, which is even crazier, are the same people that are saying, push the gender fluidity. They're the same people that are pushing the CRT. They're the same people that are, saying, we want you to have less because of climate change. We want to control the energy portfolio of the society. Right? These are the same people that are saying, what? It's justifiable to, to have a terrorist group use civilians as shields so they can put that on CNN to try to demonize the Israelis. So, we have to look at our society in the Western world and realize that we have gone too far. Democracy is good. It's an important feature of a vibrant society, but we have to take lessons learned from the pre-Noah time, that there's hubris that starts to take place. There is ungodliness that takes place, and there is this society starts to spin out of control, and we're seeing it right now. Lack of protecting the property, protecting life. There's just the society is not healthy. It's sick, and it needs to get better. Thank you for listening. And again, please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and have a nice day.